This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Larry Frank from Frankly Speaking Sports, coming to you live from Hopkinsville, Kentucky. Are you a professional tattoo artist? If you are, I have good news for you. 13 Daggers Tattoo, located at the Fort Campbell Army Post in Clarksville, Tennessee, is now looking for professional tattoo artists. If you're a professional tattoo artist and you are looking for work, make sure to contact 13 Daggers Tattoo in Clarksville, Tennessee.
Father Time is undefeated. It's going to hit Tom Brady eventually, too. It might be this year. Hopefully it's this year.
And Matt LaFleur went to both of them and said, hey, remember that play you drew up on notebook paper on Thursday? Yeah, run it now.
Like, that's the thing that's kind of tripping me up here. We've been clowning Kyrie Irving and his behavior for the past 5 years. I feel like I just got a point, like on a show or something.
3, 2, 1, Kerrsville, you've got state champions coming back home. The East Forsyth Eagles have just won Class 4A state championship.
On the line with NASCAR superstar Bubba Wallace. Bubba, what type of music are you listening to right now? Do you listen to anything particular to get you hyped before a race?
I'm in like the heavy metal stuff, like the screamo stuff, the stuff I can't understand. That's right up my alley.
Tie game at 41. Murr takes the snap. Fade. Right corner of the end zone for Timmons. He bobbled it and then honed it in the right corner of the end zone. Terrell Timmons Jr.
TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com, your home.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another amazing episode of College Football Tuesday. I'm your host, Larry Frank, and we are streaming live. That's right, we are streaming live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, and we are also on the North Streaming Sports channel on Roku TV. If you got a Roku television, folks, go to the Roku app, download Northeast Streaming Sports, and you can watch this show right now in its entirety right on your very own television set. Also, tomorrow on TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com, you can listen to the re-air of the audio of tonight's show. What a great show we have in store for you tonight. We're a few minutes away from having the great Zach Mckinnell, host of the Blue Bloods, on with us. He should be with us momentarily right now. But, you know, we have a lot to talk about tonight. A lot to talk about in the college football world. For those of you folks that would like to talk some college football and are watching the show, please feel free. Feel free to interact with the show. You can do so by leaving a question, comment, or thought about college football, your team, or anything that is going on in college football. You can leave a comment, and we will air it. That's right. We will air it and display it right here on our screen for all the fans out there to see. And then we will talk about the comment if it is a comment that has a topic that is interesting to all the people that are listening. So please feel free to do that. We're going to have an incredible show. Like I said, we're moments away from having Zach Mckinnell on with us. A lot of things happening in the world of college football on and off the field. Some major upsets last week that we're going to review. We'll talk about the AP Top 25, some good things, and what I don't think is some good things with the AP Top 25. So we'll be talking about that in a few minutes as well. But what a great night it's going to be. Want to remind everybody once again, We will be on again tomorrow night on Frankly Speaking Sports at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 8 p.m. Central, 6 Pacific, with all of your NFL Week 2 information that you need. We yesterday recapped all the games that were played in Week 1. Tomorrow, we will preview some of the big games happening in NFL Week 2 and some of the injuries that have happened over the course of the first week, which is not something that's unusual in Week 1 of the NFL season. But folks, we talk about different things. When Zach comes on, we're going to talk about the AP Top 25. Some things that, like I said earlier, I didn't really like as I moved down. One of the things I want to get with Zach on is Appalachian State not in the top 25? Come on. 63-61. They lose by 2 points to North Carolina in a game they almost won. Then they come and they upset Texas A&M, the 6th ranked team in all of college football. And guess what? They're not ranked. How don't you rank a team like this in the top 25? I'm not saying the top 10. I'm not even saying the top 20. But not to be in the top 25 is a slap in the face, and it just goes on to prove that the people in the AP polls, the USA Today polls, and all these other crappy polls out there don't know the difference between a good team and a bad team if you shoved it right in their face. There is no way that this team should not be at least at number 25 or somewhere between 20 and 25. Some may argue even between 15 and 20, but at least 20 to 25. So, that'll be one of the subjects when Zach comes on in a few minutes here that we will discuss. We'll also be discussing Notre Dame out of the AP top 25, baby. Marshall beats them. What does the AP do? They take their foot and they slam the door after they kick them out the door. They lost to Marshall. They're 0-2. They are bounced out of the AP top 25. And let's go ahead and we're going to go back to the original. But let's, at this time, folks, bring in our co-host, what I consider one of the top college football analysts in the entire country. He's from the Blue Bloods. Let's bring in Zach Mckinnell. Zach, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. How about yourself?
Buddy, I am fired up. Every single week, something else never seems to surprise us. We'll get into the Appalachian game. And, folks, for those of you listening, we'll talk about it and we'll build Zach's head up a little bit more about how accurate he was about this game last week, saying Appalachian State wins. But before we get to that, I want to talk to some what I consider, before we recap the games, some of the big news going on. First of all, the big news of the week, and to me, it really wasn't a surprise. Scott Frost starts 0-2 at Nebraska. Guess what? He won't get any better because he's no longer the coach of the Cornhuskers. First of all, before we get to who may be next, Zach, was it the right time, or do you think with just 2 games into the season, it was the wrong time?
And I said this on the show last year because I think it was USC who fired Clay Helton after like 2 or 3 games last year. In this age of college football, in the age of the coaching carousel and the transfer portal and recruiting being a year-long thing, teams know they have to get out in front of the rest of the pack. You know that the longer you sit with Scott Frost and the earlier you fire him, the more you can start making a list of candidates. You can start reaching out to potential candidates. You can start getting your search committee together. You can start the initial process of trying to replace a head coach. And the earlier you can do that, the better it is. And even if they're not going to announce a hire until what? At least November, most likely, because no one's going to announcer taking that job till the end of their season, but it gives Nebraska a head start over what is going to be an inevitable crazy season of college football coaching hires this all season. I mean, you look around the country, there's a lot of people on the hot seat. And there's going to be some big jobs potentially opening. And of course, there's going to be jobs we don't see right now that are going to be open due to coaches retiring, due to coaches taking NFL jobs, due to coaches taking other college jobs. You never know what jobs are going to be open. So I think Nebraska made the right decision. I thought Scott Frost should have been fired a minute ago. I feel like they waited probably a year too long for this. But let's be honest, man. Nebraska has been really bad for a really long time. This doesn't surprise me at all. And I think when you watch that Georgia Southern game, man, you can make an argument that Georgia Southern probably could have won by more than they did. So I think Nebraska has a lot of soul searching. And the problem Nebraska has, and I had a guest on that talked about Nebraska about a year ago, and he said the problem is the fans still think this is the Nebraska program of the 90s. And so many things have changed. You look at the partial qualifier rule that Nebraska lived on back in the 90s. You look at the age of the transfer portal recruiting. Nebraska is not a state that's overflowing with top recruits, and so so things have changed so much in college football, and Nebraska's kind of fallen by the wayside. Even though you could argue that it's one of those programs probably on the cusp of being one of those recognizable blue blood brands in college football.
And let me ask you this, Zach, because I know it's difficult, and I know each university, Power 5 school, is given a certain amount of, scholarships that they can give out. But is there any way or anything in your opinion, I know you do a lot of research on this stuff, that college football can do to kind of make the recruiting more even around these teams so it's more of an even playing field? Or is it just, and I know the kids have to decide where they go, it's their choice, but is there anything college football can do to tweak these scholarships or a system in place to make it more level field for these schools?
No, I mean, I don't think so. I mean, they've tried. Well, you look at every rule introduction that they've put into place has been to try to help the little guy out, and it just has done the complete opposite. Roster limits or scholarship limits was supposed to help the little guy, because when you look back before the scholarship limit, bigger teams were hoarding players. They would have the most players, and they would all be more talented than the other team, and no one could have depth. They installed that. The top team still got the top players. They installed different recruiting periods, hoping to kind of level out the playing field for teams that didn't have as many recruiting assistants or whatever you want to say. Didn't change anything. They thought the transfer portal was going to be the end all be all for that. And Nick Saban, listen, as much as people give him a lot of hate for it, and a lot of people thought his comments on the transfer portal were due to him being worried that someone was going to overtake him or etc. He said, listen, the transfer portal is only going to make the top teams stronger. And you've noticed that. Yes, some of the smaller teams are able to get some Power 5 guys who are transferring down or out of a bad situation. But the Bamas, the Georgias, the Ohio States get the guys out of the transfer portal that they want. Bama went out and got Jahmyr Gibbs. Bama went out and got 5-star Eli Ricks. USC got Caleb Williams. Like, the top schools get the top transfers. Quinn Ewers going to Texas. So, every rule change has tried to make it more fair, but man, we live in a society where it's always going to be like that, where the more resources, the more money, the better coaches you have, the better you're going to recruit. I don't think there's a rule that the NCAA can put in place to fix that.
Now, going forward, like you said, it's going to be a wait and see game, but who are some of the top candidates, in your opinion, that would be a good fit at Nebraska?
I think you got to look at Matt Campbell first from Iowa State. He's done an excellent job there. Now, would you look at that as, let's be honest, Iowa State's been a better program than Nebraska for probably the last 5 or 6 years, maybe even longer. So is that a sideways, a lateral move for him career-wise? Possibly, but if he can go to the Big Ten and prove his worth and do it at a school like Nebraska, he can be the guy to reestablish Nebraska as something, because you got a guy who can recruit the Midwest. He comes from Iowa, which is not just, like I said, a state overflowing with talent. So I think Matt Campbell has proven his worth, and I think this could be an interesting job for him. Now, when you're looking across, college football, this is one that K-State did a while back where you're looking up at North Dakota State. There's a coach that has won multiple national titles, has done it in the highest level, and K-State under Chris Kleiman has taken a step forward and is consistently improving. Do they give Matt Entz a call up at North Dakota State and say, listen, we know you can recruit the Midwest. We know that you know how to win championships, even if it's at the FCS level. We know you, and the biggest thing for FCS coaches when you hire them is player development. Those guys don't get 5 stars unless you're, Coach Prime and Deion Sanders. They don't get 5 stars. They develop those 2 and 3 stars that they get out of the Midwest. So Matt Entz from North Dakota State would be a name I would watch extremely closely. And this is a guy that I think I've been screaming that deserves a shot at the next level for a while. But the problem is he doesn't have the Midwest connections as others, is Coach Chadwell over at Coastal Carolina. He's built a monster Group of 5 program. We saw Billy Napier at Louisiana Lafayette, which is another guy I was screaming to get a chance, went to Florida. I think Chadwell is a dark horse for that job, and I think it's a Group of 5 coach that, regardless if it's Nebraska or someone else, I think he makes the move this season.
I'm going to name 3 different guys, and I want your opinion. And real quickly, not we don't have to drag it on or anything like that, but let's start with NC State head coach Dave Doeren. Is he a potential candidate here?
I mean, I don't see why they wouldn't want to hire him. If I'm him, though, what I've built at NC State, I'm not touching the Nebraska situation right now. I think he's good with where he's at NC State, and the biggest thing for him is he hasn't won an ACC title yet. I still think he has that chip on his shoulder where he wants to be the team in the ACC to go win that. I would be very shocked if Dorian made that move, in my opinion.
How about Bill O'Brien from Alabama, offensive coordinator?
I think that is a great possibility. Listen, what do they call it? The Nick Saban, the Nick's, yeah, like it's the Nick Saban treatment, man. You go there, get rehabbed after a failed coaching stint, and you go and get another job. So I think Bill O'Brien would be someone to look very closely, especially if this offense for Bama takes a big step forward late in the year and somehow Bryce Young goes and wins the Heisman again and they put out some crazy offensive output and especially if Sarkisian starts having success down at Texas, which I think if Ewers doesn't get hurt, that's very, very likely. I think Nebraska will look at Bill O'Brien. I think that's a candidate that you could probably put in the mix, especially over Dorian over at NC State.
And another name that always pops up, but is going to depend on his season with the Carolina Panthers, is former Baylor coach Matt Rule.
Possibly. The only question mark is when do the Panthers make that move? Does Nebraska already have a hire?
Right.
Because the NFL season lasts a lot longer. So if he doesn't get fired mid-season and he lasts to what? The NFL season goes up to almost Christmas.
It goes actually the first week of January now.
Yeah, so the first week of January, Nebraska can't wait that long. Early signing day is the second week of February, and early signing day is the second week of December. I would be shocked if Nebraska waited that long. For Matt Rule to be a real candidate, he would have to get fired mid-season by the Panthers.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's switch it up a minute. Please explain something to me. I need you to explain it because it's itching me, it's scratching me, it's crawling on me. Why the heck isn't Appalachian State in the top 25?
It's brand. It's all brand because, listen, when
you listen to me, 63-61, you lose to North Carolina, who's a respectable, I'd say respectable team, not a top 25 team, but respectable, okay? ACC team. Then you go in and you just have the upset of the number 6 team in college football. Come on. I'm not saying put them in the top 10 here, but at least somewhere between 20 and 25. You're telling me this team doesn't deserve it?
I thought they did, but, listen, they're going to look at that UNC loss. UNC hasn't looked particularly impressive yet, so they're holding that against them, and, man, we know how it is. Listen, Florida goes and beats Utah, and they jump them all the way up to 9th. And Appalachian State holds Texas A&M to less than 200 total yards, and they don't give them any respect. It comes with the territory of being a Group of 5 team, not one of those Power 5 teams that really have a bias. And so, listen, Appalachian State just wasn't going to get the nod. Now, if they knocked off both North Carolina and A&M, you might have an argument, but to the voters, man, they're never going to give those group of 5 teams any respect.
Well, one group of top 5 teams that didn't get respect. Okay, you lose again, you're 0-2, and you get bounced out of the top 25. Which
they deserved it.
I told you that Notre Dame, and you know me with Notre Dame, we didn't think they were a great team. We thought they might be an okay team, but neither of us was sold on them being national championship bound. Are you surprised that they took a number 8 team, even though they lost, what was it to them? Was it Marshall?
Marshall.
Right. They lost to Marshall, that they bounced them all the way out.
They deserve this. They
I
absolutely
agree.
deserved it.
I'm not
Listen,
mad at it. I'm just asking
you
your opinion. Is it surprising to see a number ranked 8 team be bounced all the way out of the top 25?
I don't think so. It's because preseason rankings are based on, okay, so at the FCS level, they're mainly based on last season and some projections, but in the FBS level, you have those blue blood programs to Notre Dame's, to Alabama's, to Clemson's, where they're going to get the benefit of the doubt, and every year they're going to be in the top 15. Now, I know Oklahoma hasn't lost. They haven't really played anybody, but Oklahoma, in my opinion, we talked about it, was not a top 10 team coming into the season. They lost everybody, including their head coach, and they were in the top 10. Now, they've benefited from some teams, Utah, Notre Dame, not looking great, and now they've jumped up a little bit more. But listen, if you lose to Ohio State, which they played well in the first half, but let's be honest, in that second half, Ohio State looked like the better team, and that thing could have got out of hand if 1 or 2 plays go a different way. And then you come into Marshall, and Marshall outplays you at home, and now you're looking at, and someone sent me this stat, and I didn't think of it like this. You're looking at Marcus Freeman as 0-3 as a head coach right now, because he was the acting head coach for the bowl game last year that they lost to Oklahoma State too. So Marcus Freeman has currently not won a game as a head coach right now. And you're looking at Notre Dame right now. They came out of that game banged up now. They have some long-term injuries that are going to impact that team. Quarterback play is atrocious. Offensive line play has been inconsistent. The defense just doesn't seem to have any playmakers outside of Brandon Joseph. I mean, and you look at their schedule, man. Let me pull this up real quick so I get it in the right order. You look at their schedule. I mean, they could lose some big games. They got to travel to UNC in 2 weeks. BYU comes in, and we just saw what BYU did this weekend. Yeah. They still play number 5 Clemson, and they still have to travel to USC to end the season. You could be looking at a team that's fighting for bowl eligibility this year if they don't get things turned around. So I'm not surprised. In my opinion, the voters, if you vote in the top 25, like I'm a voter for the FCS top 25, I've had 3 teams that were in my preseason top 10 drop all the way out of my rankings. And I'm okay. It's just, if as a voter, you have to admit you're wrong. Preseason rankings are based on speculation. You have to base your rankings in week 1, 2, and 3 and be okay making giant changes to it, because you got to base these polls off of what happened on the field. And right now, you can't make an argument Notre Dame looks like a top 25 team. I take App State over Notre Dame right now, easily.
I agree. Now, I know it's year 1 for Freeman, but how much patience does this university have with this guy? Is he guaranteed, you think, another year after this year?
Yeah. Because
it's his first year? Or if they really continue to play poorly, is there a chance in the 1 year he gets let go?
I hope not. Listen, the team loves him. The boosters love. I mean, he was the guy as soon as Kelly left. And I think really and truly, I don't know if Kelly left him that much sitting there. If I'm him, I'm looking at the boosters like, this isn't my talent. I didn't recruit these guys. This isn't my let him get a quarterback. Let him get a few recruiting classes. Let's not forget, Notre Dame has a top 10 class right now, top 5 class in the next recruiting rankings. If he can keep this class together, he can get a year of experience under his belt, man, I think it's going to be fine. Listen, I'll say this. I love Marcus Freeman as a head coach. I said that it was one of the best hires last season. I still believe that. It's his first ever time being a head coach. Notre Dame doesn't particularly have a lot of talent compared to the teams they've had previously. Marcus Freeman deserves at least 3 years, in my opinion, regardless of what happens.
All right, we're going to skip our break. We're going to go right into recapping last week's game. I'll tell you what, this was not a typical Alabama team that we saw. This was not a Nick Saban team. All these penalties that we saw with Nick Saban, and I'll tell you what, Texas A&M defensively played a great game until late in that fourth quarter. I mean, this was a game that they really, really played well. I mean, Bryce Young, what was it? A 33-yard field goal by Will Richard with 10 seconds left that gave Alabama the win. But, there's a time in this game, I think they punted 6 straight possessions, if I'm correct. Something like that in the game. They were dropping passes, having penalties, 11 first-half penalties, 15 for the entire game, 5 of 15 on third down. This was an Alabama team that is not what we're used to expecting when they come out on the field, is it?
No, they were really sloppy in the first half, especially Will Anderson. Will Anderson probably had 4 or 5 neutral zone infractions in the first half. It was ridiculous. I mean, he was offsides almost damn near every play. And I'll say this, and I know Alabama fans are going to hate me because it's the second straight time they played Texas and this happens. Bama has to be thanking their lucky stars Quinn Ewers got hurt, because Texas runs away with this game if Quinn Ewers is in that game. And you cannot convince me otherwise. Quinn Ewers, this is a crazy stat, man. He led the game in passing up until that last drive for Alabama.
Yeah.
He was the leading passer in the game till the fourth quarter, and he got hurt on the second or third drive. That shows you how good that kid was playing, man. And I'm wishing him a speedy recovery. I think he's going to miss 3 to 6 weeks now, 4 to 6 weeks with that injury. So I hate that for Texas, because I think they showed in the first half, man, they can hang with people. And I was wrong. Listen, I did not believe in Texas coming into this game. And he was everything that you wanted him to be, man. Some of the deep balls that Ewers threw were impressive. And really and truly, man, I hate that the refs stepped into the game like they did. There were some horrible calls on both sides. And the targeting in the end zone and everything, I mean, listen, that was horrible. The fact that gave Bama, a whole that should have been a safety. It should have been. Bryce Young had no idea where he was throwing it and just bounced it off this dude's helmet, just throwing it into the ground in the middle of a sack. So there were some questionable things. But listen, in the fourth quarter, my favorite saying in college football is big time players make big time plays in big time moments.
And Bryce Young did.
Bryce Young was that dude in the final drive when Texas kicked the field goal with 1:30 left. I was in Memphis this weekend covering a game, and I was sitting in my car in the parking lot about to go into the press box. I was like, I got to watch the end of this game. They kicked the field goal, and I texted my friend and my dad, and I was like, listen, they gave this 1:30 left on the clock. Bama's winning this game, because they're going to give the ball to number 9. And he's going to walk him down the field. And that's exactly what he did. The one where he got him in field goal range, where they brought the blitz off the edge, and he somehow made the defender miss and got out and took it 20 yards with his legs. Heisman moment right there. And even though they didn't look impressive, I still think Bama is the favorite right now to win the national championship. And the worst possible thing, and I'm just between us, this is coming from an Auburn fan that has watched this story since 2009. Bama's wake-up call to come week 2 in a non-conference game, and that wake-up call not be a loss might be the worst thing you wanted for college football, because you know what that halftime was probably like for those Alabama players when they went into halftime down with 11 penalties in the first half. You know what that hell was like.
Yep. Now, were you surprised that Georgia took over the number 1 spot?
No, I knew it, because you got to look at it. So I looked at it from a voter. Because you can argue all day, Oregon versus Texas, who's the better team. You can argue all day. But Georgia went out there and beat that team to death. I mean, they murdered Oregon. And I still don't know how Oregon got re-ranked. Listen, that beatdown should have had them in the hundreds after that. But Alabama went out there and struggled against Texas. And so when you're looking at it as a voter, both of these teams played, Georgia played Samford this weekend. Alabama played Utah State last weekend. You can't count those games. They had 2 non-conference Power 5 games. Georgia won theirs by 40. Bama had to kick a last-second field goal to win by 1, and the starting quarterback had to get hurt. Georgia, in my opinion, had to be number 1 this week, or people would have been very upset. So I completely agree with the ranking this week right now.
All right, we're going to move on. The upset, one of the upsets of the week. Marshall 26 over Notre Dame kicks them out of the top 25 with a 26-21 lead. 3 huge turnovers by Notre Dame in this game Give Marshall credit. No turnovers versus Notre Dame in this game. What? Cal and LeBron, 163 yards, 1 touchdown. I think the key stat here is give the kid Columbi, the quarterback of Marshall, no mistakes. When you don't make mistakes and you have a running game that is working, it makes your quarterback look even sexier when he throws the ball because he has a lot less pressure on him because the running game's working. And Marshall ran the ball versus Notre Dame.
You have to, in my opinion, the story of the game was the rushing attack. And when you look at Marshall's rushing attack, they rushed for 219 yards on 50 carries and a touchdown, averaged almost 5 yards per carry as a team. When you look at Notre Dame, take out the quarterback because Buckner's stats are really kind of fluff in terms of getting out of the pocket and making some plays.
And he's out for the season now.
Yeah, he's out for the season. And so when you look at the running backs, they ran for less than 100 yards and 0 touchdowns and average less than 3 yards per carry. And and this is what gets me about Notre Dame. Their one big target is Meyer, who's the tight end, a stud, a future NFL tight end. Let's just be honest. We've been
watching him for years.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, there's no question here. Styles and Ballman has some moments, but I don't think they have that it factor right now in terms of the wide receiver position outside of Meyer, and they don't have a run game, and the quarterback play on both sides is just atrocious. Buckner and Pine played horrible. 3 interceptions combined. Pine came in and has a 12 QBR, and that's your guy moving forward if you're Notre Dame. And I think Columbi, he just did enough not to lose it, man. He was efficient, 16 for 21, didn't do anything spectacular. But LeBourne, the running back for Marshall, MVP, 163 on 30 carries, an absolute workhorse. And I think you also have to give the front 7 for Marshall on both sides of the football a lot of credit. They held their own. And as a former lineman myself, I loved watching the physicality and the execution, working up to both levels and just creating running lanes against what was supposed to be a talented front 7 for Notre Dame. But they exposed a lot of stuff. And Neal and Sam on the defensive side for Marshall combining for 20 tackles. You got to give them credit too, man. Marshall played an outstanding game, and they deserve to win this one.
And LeBourne, to piggyback on what you said about the Russian attack, ran the ball 31 times. They handed it to him alone. And that's not all the handoffs. That's just to him. And it just shows you exactly what you said. Let's go ahead and move it on, buddy. Tennessee over Pittsburgh. Okay. Don't tell me you don't believe in Hendon Hooker anymore. The guy is incredible. Him and Tillman teaming up like they are is just incredible. 325 yards, 2 touchdowns for Hooker. Tillman, 9 receptions, 162 yards. But you know what? That's not what impressed me. What impressed me is the defense in this game. I know they scored 27 points, but third downs when they had to stop them, they stopped them 14 out of 18 times. They stopped them on third downs. That's a formula to win some ball games. Slavis wasn't the same Slavis we saw the week before. We knew that was going to happen, eventually. And Tennessee, they're ranked 24th. Some people will argue with that ranking as well because we know how dangerous they are. But the one thing about these SEC teams, they're going to get their opportunities to move up in that poll very quickly with some of the games they got to play the rest of the season. But I was impressed with Hooker this weekend.
Yeah, he did great, man. I'd still like to see him be a little bit more efficient. I know it sounds nitpicky, but when you get into SEC play, man, you got to be a little bit more efficient. But the biggest thing is, even though he's not super efficient, he still didn't turn the ball over, and that's super key because usually, low percentage quarterbacks like that do turn the ball over. And man, he kept the ball out of Pitt's hands, man. So I got to give him credit. The one concern I have about Tennessee coming out of this game is their rushing attack. They got to find a way to run the football, man. The offensive line has to do a better job of controlling the line of scrimmage in the run game. Did a solid job protecting Hooker. But, man, Wright and Small and these running backs, man, they had 2 rushing touchdowns at the goal line. But, man, they just couldn't get a consistent run game. And when you look at what Abaconda did for Pitt, man, he was running the football amazing, 150 on the ground. It just came down to Hooker outplays Slovis and what was the backup, Patty or something like that.
Yeah, Patty
was the backup. So neither of those guys were super efficient. And I think you needed better games from Slovis and Patty, because you cannot beat a Hendon Hooker led explosive offensive team in Tennessee turning the football over and not having effective quarterback play. So that was the story of the game for me. And let's be honest, it was the turnovers that really counted, because they just seemed to come at the worst times for Pitt, and that really cost them this game.
Yeah, definitely. All right, we're going to move on to a game. I love it. I love it when a guy comes back to play a former team and he stuffs it in their face. And that's exactly what happened in this Washington State versus Wisconsin game. Washington State upsets Wisconsin 19-14. What's his name? Nikhil Watson, I think it is. Yeah. 2 touchdowns. The former Badger goes ahead, scores 2 touchdowns, 1 rushing, and then guess what? He also catches a pass. So, I mean, exciting, great play calling in that game. But in all fairness, we talked about penalties, how Alabama had many. Wisconsin gave this game 11 penalties, 106 yards.
I don't want to brag. I can send you my college pick 'em. I picked this upset.
And they were 17.5 underdog in this game.
Yeah, I can send it. My friends were pissed. On my college confidence pick 'em, I had this as my 1-point upset. And my guy didn't play super well, and he's the only reason I picked it. Cameron Ward was the reason I picked it. Threw for 200, but he had 2 big turnovers, man. But I'm not super concerned about that. But it comes back down to also Mertz can never win the big game, man.
We've said that year after year.
I've said it. If it's a big game, and this was a big game, even though Washington State doesn't have a lot of, what do you call it, clout behind them, or whatever the perception may be, they were coming in 1-0, and this is a Pac-12 Big Ten matchup. It's a big out-of-conference matchup for both of these teams, and I'm never betting on Graham Mertz in that game, ever. I'm just not doing it. And, really and truly, I mean, Cameron Ward completed a higher percentage of passes, and, he had more turnovers, but it also came down to the fact, like you said, penalties. And that's something that Wisconsin, let's be honest, between us, that's usually not Wisconsin football. They're usually very disciplined, and they don't make dumb mistakes like that, but it just seemed like they consistently shot themselves in the foot. And also, I got to give the Washington State defense some credit. They look so much faster than the Washington State defenses that you saw under Mike Leach. They have some athletes out there on the back end that can make some plays. And just between us, I think you have to watch out for Washington State in the Pac-12 this year, especially with how many questions I have about Oregon. Utah has not looked particularly amazing. I still got questions about USC. Don't sleep on Washington State out there making it interesting in the Pac-12 North this year.
All right, let's jump around that way for time-wise. We talked about it a little bit earlier. I don't think the score is as indicative of this game. I really thought Appalachian State won by, if you didn't know and you watched the game and you didn't watch the score, they really outplayed, in my opinion, Texas A&M this game. I mean, when you look at it, this defense of Appalachian State, 2 sacks, 2 turnovers, they held them 2-8 on 3rd downs, all right? I know your buddy Chase Bryce, you love him, but listen to this. Mountaineers outgained A&M 305 to 186 yards and had 22 first downs to the Texas A&M 9. Gets better, Zach. Time of possession, 41 minutes, 29 seconds to 18 minutes, 31 seconds. I mean, just, incredible game. Sean Clark of App State, the coach, has to be proud of this team.
I called this, man. I said I didn't believe in A&M's offense. They looked atrocious against Sam Houston. Haynes King is just not the answer. 97 yards passing, a 21 QBR, and they struggled rushing the football. I mean, listen, I know I believe it's Acknane is the starting running back. I mean, he averaged 6.6 yards per carry, but he got 10 carries. That was it.
Doesn't do no good.
You got to run the football. And, you mentioned the reason I picked Appalachian State, and I've said this on my show so many times, Cameron Peoples is a top 5 running back in college football.
112 yards on
He is
19 carries.
He is different, man. And that's the same kid. He was the bowl MVP either last year or the year before. He had like 300 yards rushing and 5 touchdowns in one game in a bowl game. Just went crazy. And his explosiveness and his experience, he was hurt last year. That's why a lot of people forgot about him. He was hurt throughout the year. Cameron Peoples is that guy. And Chase Bryce.
You talk about the defense also, which we were talking about besides Peoples. They held the passing game to A&M to 97 yards. Not even 100 yards in this game. I mean, that's just incredible. I'll tell you what, watch out for Appalachian State. They're playing some of their tougher games right now. So I'd like to see how they end up. And if they win this week, they better be in the damn top 25. All right, buddy. Anthony Richardson found out it's not always glorified when you necessarily play in the SEC. Kentucky outplayed Florida 26-16. What can you say? 2 interceptions by Richardson, 1 return for 65 yards by Keedron Smith for a touchdown. Just wasn't Florida's day here versus Kentucky.
And I knew it in my gut, and I still picked Florida in a close one because it was in the swamp, and I just felt it in my gut. We were going to see Anthony Richardson last year. This stat pisses me off. His QBR last week was a 3. A 3 out of 100. He got a 3.8 QBR. I mean, he completed less than 50% of his passes for less than 150 yards and 2 interceptions and had 4 yards rushing on 6 carries. And he got all 4 on 1 carry. That means he lost, he had to lose yards on all oh man, I'm so angry that I picked Florida. But listen, you got to give Kentucky credit. They've done this under Mark Stoops. And, what was it? A few weeks ago, he got into it with John Calipari saying we're a football school. I was looking back. Did you know they've been in the top 10 almost every year for the past 5 or 6 years at one point or the other? And almost every year they've been in the top 20. Man, he has done a hell of a job. And listen, Levis isn't a world beater at quarterback, but he's a gamer. And even though he makes mistakes, he's always always there. And that short memory really helps them. And then Smoke at the running back spot is consistent. He had 80 yards rushing. Man, Kentucky's just that gritty team, and they take after their coach. And JJ Weaver on the defensive side of the football is one of my favorite players to watch. Right, also with a sack, 2 tackles for loss this weekend. The team is just gritty. The team is just one of those teams that if you get into a scrap like this and they can force you to play their game, which they did with Florida, they're winning it every time. And I mean, they win again in the swamp. They went 70 years or something like that without winning in the swamp, and now they've won 2 out of their last 3 in the swamp.
Yeah, it was just 3 years ago. That you're right.
Yeah, I give Stoops all the credit in the world, man, and they deserve everything they're getting. And I love the Kentucky program and how much growth I've seen, because I know I'm younger because I'm only 25, but I remember as a kid, Kentucky was like the doormat of the SEC in football. If I saw Kentucky on the schedule, that was a win. And now they are a consistent contender in the East. And if it really wasn't for Georgia's dominance and the rise when you saw Kentucky get better, I mean, you would argue that Kentucky would have had a chance to be in Atlanta a handful of times over these past few years.
All right, let's jump over, buddy, because I want to get to also next week. Another game. We got 1 or 2 of them left. Double overtime. BYU is surprising me. It took Katoa a 3-yard run in overtime to win it. Chris Roberts, 122 rushing yards on 8 carries, a touchdown, and 1 reception for a 22-yard touchdown. So incredible game. Baylor, I mean, I'll tell you what, BYU is one of those teams this year that looks like they could be a surprise.
I told people, listen, I was on a show and they asked me who my surprise college football playoff contenders were. And I said, BYU is that team. If they go undefeated, they're in the playoffs. They travel to Autzen this weekend and play a ranked Oregon team. Then they still get Notre Dame, which we'll see what that game looks like. Then they still play number 10 Arkansas later in the season. They still got to play on the road against Boise State, which is always a quality win. They get Liberty with Hugh Freeze, which is always a quality team. And they got to travel to Stanford, and we'll see what that game looks like. They'll have multiple Power 5 wins. And if Arkansas keeps going the way it is, and they win that game, that's 2 top 10 wins, 3 ranked wins on their schedule. And let's just be honest, if Notre Dame wins like 2 or 3 games in a row, they'll probably be ranked again. So you could be going into that college football playoff conversation with 4 ranked wins and like 6 or 7 Power 5 wins. I don't know how you argue BYU wouldn't deserve that bid.
No, I agree. And I mean, they are just playing great. But also, in all fairness, first of all, BYU's defense sacked Sharpen 4 times in this game. But it seems like the story of the week in college football with these Power 5 schools losing or getting beat up by some of these other schools has been penalties. 14 penalties, 117 yards. I mean, it's hard to win football games when you're making that many mistakes. I want to go over one game with you real quickly, maybe in about a minute recap, but to me, I was a little surprised. I wanted to see if you're surprised with it, but ACC game, Duke beating Northwestern.
No, I'm not surprised. I think when you look at how Northwestern struggled with Nebraska and what we found out about Nebraska last week,
Right.
I'm not super surprised, man. Listen, I think Duke is improving. It's just one of those programs that it's really, really hard to build a big college football contender. But listen, it was always a bad idea when Helinski's got to throw 60 times in a game. Always a recipe for disaster. And Duke ran the ball really well, over 200 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns. I'm taking that every time over a quarterback throwing 60 times, being as inconsistent as Helinski is. It didn't surprise me that much, man.
All right, let's go ahead. We're not going to take our break because I want to run down next week's slate. And I want to start off, we were just talking about BYU. They're going to play your old friend, Bo Nix, who I'm going to tell you what last week had a pretty good game. I know it was Eastern Washington. Don't tell me that. I already know that. But come on. 277 yards, 5 touchdowns. But I'm going to tell you what. The key to this game, no doubt about it in my mind, for BYU, they have to stop Oregon on 3rd down. Nobody has been able to stop. They're 15th in the country. I know it's only 2 games. But they're 58.6% on 3rd down. You got to get that number down if you're Oregon and you plan on beating BYU, who has a lot of momentum and a lot of confidence, although this game is in Oregon.
Give me BYU all day.
All right.
Give me BYU.
I like my pick too.
Listen, that defense is going to eat Bo Nix alive. He does this every time. He gives you a little bit of false hope against someone that they overpower, and then he takes your soul the next week when they go up against a ranked team. I'm taking BYU. I love Hall at quarterback. I think he's electric with the ball in his hands. I love the defense too, man. Like we just talked about with Kentucky, the BYU defense is gritty, they're fast, and they're tough, and they're opportunistic as well. I think BYU forces some opportunistic turnovers. I got BYU in this one.
All right. Another game, Penn State at Auburn. I don't think Auburn has a prayer. I'm not a big Finley fan. I don't know if you are. I haven't been impressed. There's only one way that I think Auburn can come out and beat Sean Clifford and Penn State. That means Big Lee has to run and forget to stop running. Tank has to have a game like his name, the Tank, in order for them to win this game. I'm just not sold on him. I mean, he's played subpar teams, Finley, in his first 2 games. I don't think Auburn's really played anybody terrific. And I know he has 3 interceptions, I think, in the first 2 games.
You're right on that. The only thing I'll say is, man, it's really hard to come down south at 2:30 and play in Jordan-Hare Stadium. It is
I agree.
Brutal. And then they're pulling out the orange face mask, undefeated with the orange face mask since we brought that back out. As much as my soul is telling me Penn State probably could possibly pull up the upset, if this game was anywhere other than Jordan-Hare Stadium, I would pick them. But listen, I think it's too much for them to overcome. As much as, you know me, I've picked against Auburn on the show more than I've picked them. I think Auburn pulls the upset this weekend. I do think they're going to run Bigsby and also Jarquez Hunter into the ground. I trust that Auburn defensive line to get some pressure. I got Auburn winning a close one, possibly by a field goal, less than 10 points. So it's going to be a one-score game. But because it's in Jordan-Hare Stadium, I got Auburn pulling the upset this weekend.
And, this is a tale of two different offenses. I mean, you got Penn State's passing game versus Auburn's rushing game. Auburn is averaging 247.5 yards per game rushing. Penn State is averaging 323 yards passing. Whoever can stop the other team's strength, whether Penn State stops the rushing game or Auburn stops their passing game, is going to win this game. I'm sorry to say, I know it's in Auburn. I don't think they got enough. I'm not comfortable enough with Finley to win this game, even at home. All right, let's move over. Texas Tech versus North Carolina State is a pretty interesting game, in my opinion. Texas Tech just beat number 25, I think, last week, Houston, which is a pretty darn good team. This is a game that I watch and I look, and if NC State's going to win, they got to make Texas Tech quarterback Smith succumb to pressure. He had 3 interceptions versus Houston. If you put pressure on this guy, he will make mistakes. He's 50 of 74, 572 yards, 6 touchdowns, 3 interceptions on the season. You and I have been talking about Devin Leary, all year long. But this Texas Tech team, Zach, scores a lot of points. They're 26th in the nation, averaging 48 points. Once again, who the heck have they played? I know. 411 passing yards, 5th in the nation. But on the flip side, NC State's defense has only allowed 11.5 points per game, 30th in. How do you see this one fare? Is it an automatic NC State win, or do you think this is going to be a closer game than a lot of people expect?
I give NC State the pretty big advantage. They got one come to Carter Finley Stadium, and on top of that NC State defense is legit. I really do think NC State has a legit defense this year, and for me, Texas Tech always struggles against tough physical defenses, just like NC State's bringing in. And also, I don't think they have the defense to give Leary and that offense any problems. I think they're going to be able to run the ball well. It's going to open up things through the air for Leary. I got NC State by double digits in this one.
All righty. Want to move on? All year long we've been talking about, when I say all year long, but a couple weeks now, David Van Dyke. But you know what? It's been Henry Parrish Jr. carrying the load from Miami this year, averaging 107.5 yards in the first 2 games, and he has 4 touchdowns. Want you to listen to this. Miami wide receiver Xavier Restrepo, 172 receiving yards on the season. Miami is, now listen to these stats, averaging 50 points per game, 525 yards per game, 241 yards rushing, and 65.2% third down, which is 5th in the nation. And meanwhile, I look at A&M. They really haven't gone up against anyone to really get me excited. They lost the 1 game just this weekend. I like Miami on the road in this game.
Give me Miami. Give me everything they're selling. I'll take it. Van Dyke's a better quarterback than Haynes King. I think the rushing battle is going to be interesting because I think Acknane's a great running back. I think Parrish has done a great job running the football. The one question I have is, how does Jimbo Fisher get that team refocused and remotivated for this game, especially coming off of a crushing loss last week? And what is the fan support going to be? This game kicks off at 8 p.m. Central. It's in prime time. Are the fans going to be as invested now that they just saw this team get dominated by Appalachian State? I think Miami's going to come in with a lot of confidence after watching that. Give me Miami, and I think this game could be a double-digit win for Miami and a signature win for the first year of Mario Cristobal.
The next game I picked here, I wanted to show you. It's a very intriguing game. If you love offensive football, you got to like this Purdue at Syracuse matchup. I don't know if I'd put Syracuse 3-0. I think they're 2-0. I accidentally have 3-0 up there. But Aidan O'Connell versus Garrett Schrader. I mean, I always liked Aidan O'Connell and what he's due at Purdue. But, this Syracuse team also has a great running game to go along with Garrett Schrader, who has 5 touchdown passes on the year. Is this a Purdue win?
I got Syracuse in this one.
Okay.
I really like what that Syracuse program's building. I thought Louisville was going to be a sleeper team to really watch, especially with all the transfers they had bringing in. Syracuse went out there and smacked them 31-7 in week 1. Then of course, everyone beats UConn. A team of me and you can go out there and compete with UConn. So not going to give a lot of credit last week, but they went out there and smacked around Louisville. And when you look at Purdue, the question, like you said, the question I have is, can they match the passing output and run the ball enough? And if you put the ball in O'Connell's hands in a shootout, is he ever going to make the mistake to cost you that game? And I trust Schrader. He's looked amazing the first 2 games, 38 for 48, 500 yards and 5 touchdowns these first few weeks. Tucker's been great at the running back spot, and he's their leading wide receiver too. Don't forget that as well. He leads the team in receiving, so I think the Syracuse offense has enough. They go to the Dome and get a huge out-of-conference win. Syracuse is going to live up to that banner right there, 3-0.
All right, now that was my junior shootout, but the major shootout of the week, I'll tell you what, you got to watch this game. It's going to be fun to watch. How about Tanner Mordecai versus Tua's brother in the shootout of my week, SMU versus Maryland? This should be a fun game to watch.
I'm excited for it. What both of these teams are averaging over 330 yards passing per game right now. I mean, it's going to be interesting, and it's tough because I'm kind of torn on it. I think I'm leaning SMU here. I like SMU for the upset. They always seem to pull one off, and Mordecai is electric. I like McDaniel as the running back spot. I think SMU goes in there and upsets Maryland this weekend. Give me this as one of my upsets of the week. I think Maryland's a 3.5-point favorite. Give me SMU in the upset.
The question of the week. We're going to get it answered, folks, right here by Zach Mckinnell. Does Notre Dame fall to 0-3 versus California and quarterback Jack Plummer?
Ooh. Where are they playing? Is it in Notre Dame?
I'm not sure on that one.
Oh man. Okay, I'm gonna ride off my guy Marcus Freeman. He gets corrected 1 and 2 this week for Notre Dame. If they go to 0-3, man, it is going to be pure disaster up there in South Bend. I think they get the win against Cal.
All right. Surprise of the week. Any games? I know there's a lot going on. Not as many Power 5 matchups as there's been versus each other. That'll come again, I think, starting next week. But anything if you're looking at that people should watch out for?
10 p.m. Central Time on FS1. Give me North Dakota State by double digits over Arizona.
Wow.
Double digits. They're going to smack Arizona. They should be the favorite. There's not a spread on that game for some reason. North Dakota State should be the favorite. They are going to smack around Arizona, especially after Arizona. I think they lost to Oregon State last week, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that. I know they're 1-1. Oh, they lost to Mississippi State last week at home. And listen, North Dakota State's going to come in there and put one on them. I think North Dakota State's won 6 straight FBS games as an FCS team dating back to their last 6. I think they get another one this weekend against Arizona.
Got 30 seconds to answer this, okay, my friend? Has there been anyone so far this year that is creeping up on your Heisman list that we may not have mentioned in the past?
No, I think it's still the 2 guys are probably the favorites. I think with at week 2, it's hard to have a big Heisman moment right now. So for a lot of these guys creeping up, when you look at the creep ups, Joe Burrow, Cam Newton, they had their Heisman moments in the bigger games late in the season. So I think that's where we're going to see some guys emerge, but there are some guys you could look out for though.
All right, my friend. Well, listen, another great show. By the way, folks, breaking news from us here on College Football Tuesday Broadcasting News. We have just got an agreement that next week on College Football Tuesday, our guest will be former Miami Hurricane coach Dennis Erickson will be joining us on the show. Looking forward to that. Until next week, folks, have a great night, and we'll see you again next week.